What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Line Movement Pre-Kickoff Show. I'm Dieter Kurtenbach. I'm joined by the illustrious Joel Holka and the internet's fantasy heartthrob, Peter Overzet. We are here to go through everything that relates to daily fantasy betting. We're going to get you ready for an impressive Sunday slate. And by impressive, I just mean what you're going to do on this fantastic Sunday, Week 7 in the NFL. Let's touch base with Peter Overzet. Peter, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. I do think it's an impressive slate. We're getting it stretching all the way to Sunday Night Football, a full 12 games. This is one of the best GPP slates of the year. So many options. You can play the best plays and still be relatively contrarian. So I'm excited for it.
Cool. And Joe Holka, how are you doing, baby?
Yeah, I'm just excited to be on another show with fantasy heartthrob Peter Overzet. I think that's the main thing here. We got a lot of news, but no news as important as that one, I think.
Listen, I try to break it, and someone had to say it. It's been sitting in front of us this entire time. It had to be stated. Let's start this week's slate with Browns and Bengals. Let's get kind of the nasty stuff out of the way early. What do you say? Browns go to Cincinnati. Not that far of a drive, though I'm pretty sure they'll fly. It is 2020. They're 3.5-point favorites. The total on this game is 50.5. Let's start with you, Joel Holka. What is your betting play, and how you feeling about the daily fantasy impact of this contest?
Yeah, I always really enjoy the perspective from Dieter too, because he says oh, this game is really gross. And this is one of the games everyone's talking about in DFS right now.
Hey, man,
so there's a ton of plays.
Totally different worlds.
Yeah. So I'll let Peter touch on the betting side, because I think there's a lot of meat here for DFS. Obviously, if we're looking at paying down at quarterback, Joe Burrow at 5,500 is an option that a lot of people could be going to. But now that we know that we have no Joe Mixon, Gio Bernard at 4,500 at running back is going to be one of the chalkiest plays on the entire slate, next to Jamal Williams. I would imagine both of those cheaper running backs will be a really popular way to build lineups. And then we have Kareem Hunt on the other side, who's probably, 500-600 at least underpriced in terms of the volume he's seeing against the Cincinnati team. We got Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, AJ Green for a cheap option. There's tons of plays in this game. I think if we were even to look at the defense, I love the Cleveland defense at 2,800. So this is one that outside of maybe the Seattle Arizona game, maybe the Green Bay and Houston game, this is a game that I think a lot of people will gravitate towards in fantasy and DFS.
Peter, before we throw it to you, I do have to just posit this into the ether here because I'm coming at it from the betting only, from the entertainment perspective. I don't dive into the daily stuff like you guys do, and I won't even pretend to hang out in that pool. But isn't it sometimes as simple as Joe Burrow, rookie quarterback behind a bad offensive line, going up against a really good defensive line in Cleveland, and that's in and of itself the game? Am I underthinking this, overthinking this? Where do you stand on that matchup in and of itself, Peter?
Yeah, I from the betting angle, I don't have a too strong of a read on the spread. The over under at 50.5. That seems a smidge too high for me. When they played back in, I think it was week 2, it shot out. There was shoot it out.
It was a shootout, but I like where you're going. We're going to work with the English language on this one.
This is what happens when Dieter tells us before the show that he's a nationally ranked journalist who has won lots of prizes. He is going to correct me on that. Yes, back then there were 65 total combined points. However, we know with trends in divisional matchups, the second matchup is normally a little lower scoring, and there's a lot of uncertainty about Baker Mayfield's health right now, working through a rib injury here. So I kind of lean toward the under for this, but I'm with Joe in that there's a lot of interesting pieces here for DFS and also a lot of interesting leverage. Gio and Hunt are going to be really popular, but if you want to play that Burrow double stack with Boyd and Higgins, all of them are in the mid 5s. It's incredibly affordable to do. So to get leverage at a cheap price, and if Vegas is right on this over under, then I think that's a really good starting block for a lineup.
Let me throw this prop to both of you guys. This was given to us by Jordan before the show. Kareem Hunt reception yards, 19.5. That's the total. Where do you guys stand on Kareem Hunt receiving yards? Joe?
This one's pretty close. It's like almost right at the projection I have for him, though. I do want to be, I guess, on the right side of Kareem Hunt this week. So I hate betting overs like in general in props, but I think that I'm pretty close to even, but I'll go over.
Peter?
Yeah, I'll take the over as well. I think last week was a little bit of a fluke with his workload. They were getting blown out, and they were using Dontrell Hilliard and Dearness Johnson in the fourth quarter. So I do think Kareem Hunt returns to a full bell cow role here. And the nice thing actually from ownership is I think Hunt was going to be way more chalky than he was before the Jamal Williams play opened up. People want to play Gio as well. They want to play Kamara. So one of these guys is going to get squeezed out. I think Hunt and Mike Davis are going to see a little bit lower ownership than initially anticipated.
It'll be interesting. So I see where you guys are coming from with this game. There is a lot of meat on this bone, but still, you're going to have to watch the Bengals and the Browns play football. And I'm with Pete here on the under. I think that this game has slot fest written all over it. Neither team really capable of exerting their will on the other. Cleveland should have a massive talent advantage, but again, I just don't know if Baker Mayfield is physically or emotionally or mentally capable of handling what it is they're asking him to do. It took a big step back the last couple of weeks. Let's go to Carolina and New Orleans. NFC South matchup. New Orleans 6.5 point favorite on blitzbet.eu. Blitzbet.eu, very good website. You should use it. I feel like this is an overcorrection for everybody getting in on the Panthers last week, being favored against the Bears, or even maybe even a pick 'em at that point. They get their butts kicked defensively. They couldn't move anything against that Bears defense. And the Saints, who I repeat might be secret trash. I can't give that up. Now getting giving up 6.5. Let's start with you, Pete. How do you feel about this game from the betting angle, and who are you playing in it?
Well, it was brought to my attention that we are picking the Saints in the winner-take-all super contest here. So I don't know. That was a Joe lean, so we have him to thank or to blame when this goes south. It's tough. You really, I still don't mind it, but you really want Michael Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders to be playing when you're backing them here. They're really down to weapons. I mean, Traquan Smith's going to be their number one wide receiver. They have Jared Cook, and of course, they got the running backs in Kamara and Latavius. I don't know, Joe. I need Joe to make the case because I know he did a little research on this, did a video. So what do you got on the Saints here, Joe?
Talk to me, baby.
Yeah, I'll preface it with it was a much stronger bet with Michael Thomas. So I'm with you there. We have to have our picks in a little bit earlier for the super contest. I do think that it kind of comes down to just, I don't know if I'm really as in on this Carolina team as a lot of people. I think that there's going to be some pressure on Teddy in this one. He's someone that has done relatively well under pressure this year overall. But I don't think it really is a huge drop off in terms of this New Orleans defense versus what we've seen in the past. I mean, if there's one team that knows Teddy very well, it's going to be this New Orleans Saints team. So maybe they kind of get a little bit unique with the types of blitz packages they bring. So I think that could be a difference. I love Kamara for DFS. I love Traquan at 4K. I think that like Traquan, obviously no Sanders, no Thomas. In theory, you just think he would just like slot right into that role. but I don't know. This is a guy that hasn't done that well in that role in the past. So I do have some concerns if Traquan Smith approaches like 30% ownership in some of these higher stakes tournaments. That might be one of the plays that we would look to kind of pivot away from. We haven't built our tilt space teams yet, but that's at least my initial lean. I guess expand a little bit on Mike Davis, Pete, because he's one that like earlier in the week, I'm with you, like that range, like him, Kareem Hunt, a lot of people just are going to ignore it now, I think. But Mike Davis is 6,600 with this target share. Not a great matchup, anything like that, but I do like Davis a lot, especially if he's going to be lower owned.
Yeah, Mike Davis is one of my favorite running back plays this week. Nothing is different this week than it was from last week. He just disappointed a little bit. And of course, recency bias is in full swing, and there are other good plays. So just necessitated by that, one of these guys is going to get squeezed. And I do think it's going to be Mike Davis, who, based on his role, I mean, he's getting a bell cow usage role, and he's 6,600. And we've seen Carolina in New Orleans shoot out. I remember the game last year, late in the season in the Superdome. DJ Moore went nuclear in that game. I mean, we can see this game pace up. So I love Mike Davis. He's going to be a guy I have in multiple lineups.
What are we thinking about Breeze at this juncture? This is a guy who will spread it out, obviously, but has always had the weapons. And now that you don't have Thomas, you don't have the slant god out there. He hasn't had him this season, but it hasn't been this diminished. You can only throw the ball to the running back so many times before a defense can key in on it. I'd like to think that Carolina, with Matt Rule at the helm, is a team that can key in on repetitive, predictable plays. Breeze might have to show us something that I don't think he's shown us yet this entire year. And if that's the case, I don't know. I'm with you, Joe. I'm not in on Carolina. I think Carolina is dramatically overrated. I think that the market has no idea what to do with them, and they give them too much credit. But I might be in on 6.5 here just because I'm not betting on Drew Brees. I'm just not betting on him right now until he proves that he's still an elite level quarterback. He's going to the Hall of Fame. He's incredible. One of the best to ever do it. He's got all these records, but like, dude's old and his arm is broken. And we're seeing it with Phillip Rivers. I mean, we can argue that we've seen parts of it with Tom Brady. He's come back down a little bit. Like, you're not supposed to be this old and continue to be as good as you once were. And I think that the demise of Drew Brees, it's never a slow, steady one. It's always a cliff. And this year might be the cliff. So something to keep an eye on in this game. If they can't cover, even if they win, if they can't cover against Carolina, I think that we have to start really reevaluating how we view the New Orleans Saints moving forward. And we'll continue.
One more thing, Dieter, before we move on. I think the Kamara thing, the one thing that always pops up to me, and there's some sharp higher stakes people that they literally only look at props, and what they're looking at isn't necessarily from a projection standpoint, but they want to see outliers. So for the entire season, if Alvin Kamara has a reasonable receiving yards, rushing yards, prop, receptions, whatever it is, and we see a game where that spikes significantly, they are interested in that sort of thing. So Alvin Kamara in this spot looks like even at blitzbet.eu is projecting for almost 120 overall yards from scrimmage, 6.5 receptions is that prop. So that's not super high, but I mean, over 120 total yards in this spot. I get what you mean. You can only throw to the running back so many times, but this is a spot where, I mean, it's a realistic expectation that we could see Kamara catch 10 balls in this spot.
Well, it's telling. Isn't that telling, right? Like, they have to give it to him that often. He has to get that many yards if they stand a chance. But I think we're going to find out a lot about Carolina in terms of what they can do from a professional level. I don't think they're competing for the playoffs or anything, despite their record being in the hunt. But if they're going to be, kind of like a top 10 worst team or somewhere in that middle, that kind of non-lottery draft guys who don't make the playoffs. But we're going to find out everything we need to know about New Orleans. And I just don't think that you can chalk it up to, Thomas is out, so therefore, none of this counts. Like, it does count. And your ability to, survive without Michael Thomas, you've gotten by. Now you're down Emmanuel Sanders. You just banged up in a lot of places. And I just think that the book might get out on the Saints in this game because Matt Rule is a very good defensive head coach. And I think Carolina has enough talent to maybe write the book on him. So something to keep an eye on. Maybe I'm way off. Let's talk about the Lions and the Falcons. So the Falcons get off the schneid. They beat the Vikings last week in somewhat impressive fashion, though I don't know if you can be impressive beating the Minnesota Vikings at this juncture. The Detroit Lions might have finally found something in Swift, the running back, and NFL Network reporting that he was going to be more of the bell cow today. Sorry, Adrian Peterson stands. What are we thinking about this game where Atlanta at home is giving up 2.5 with a total of 54.5? We'll start with you, Joe.
Yeah, this is one that I think if you were on Matthew Stafford to Kenny Golladay last week in DFS and you were is disappointed, there's really no reason to not jump back on the train this week. I think one of the biggest things last week was Gardner Minshew on the other side going to be able to keep pace. Now we have this Atlanta team that we know is going to be able to score points. Both defenses pretty average. I think that there's going to be moderate ownership or probably minimal ownership overall in some of these weapons outside of maybe Kenny Golladay. But we got to go to our resident DeAndre Swift tout, Peter Overzet. Can we play this guy at 5,400 with all the other good value?
I mean, the thing is if you would have asked me this an hour ago, despite being the preeminent DeAndre Swift tout, people do forget I did tout that last week. I would say no, like his role just isn't good enough. He's in a 3-way split. And now this report comes out and it's just like, I don't know what to do with these reports sometimes because Matt Patricia has been incredibly stubborn. He wants to do things how he wants to do things. And I don't know. It makes sense based on how DeAndre Swift performed. He absolutely deserves more touches. He's the far more explosive, dynamic back. I don't know if I buy it. And there's a huge opportunity cost at running back this week. I mean, we have 2 incredible punt plays in Gio and Jamal Williams. We have Mike Davis and Hunt, who we talked about, Kamara, who we just talked about. So you have to make some sacrifices. It feels a little thin. To me, it's probably more of a Millie Maker type play as opposed to your single entry and 3 max. We got Ryan Osborne in the chat playing the $50 red zone single entry. He's probably not putting DeAndre Swift in that team, but I think he's intriguing. And in this game might end up going overlooked. I'm looking at ownership right now and hardly anything over 10%. So this game seems very nice for DFS.
Well, what do you think? Why do you think that is the case? There's a lot of points that are supposed to be scored in this game. Why no love?
Joe, I think it's just because now everyone is gravitating to this Sunday Night Football hammer with Arizona in Seattle. And then also we have a couple other games, Green Bay, Houston, people are really enamored with. And I think this game, it's going to catch some ownership, but the whole slate is going to be relatively muted, especially at wide receiver and tight end. Running backs, we'll see some elevated ownership, but I mean, Joe, are there going to be any wide receivers in this game, despite how good Golladay and Ridley are, that are going to be even over 15 or 20%?
I don't think so, man. I think you said it. Like these games that we have available in Green Bay and Houston and Seattle and Arizona, just gets you to a spot where it's like it's going to condense on there so much because of the late night hammer that I think that that's really what we got to focus on. And overall, like this is an interesting game because there's supposed to be a lot of points, but like narrowing down the exact plays has been a little bit tougher for me. Neither of these quarterbacks give us anything on the ground. So I'm not as interested. I think that if you wanted to roll them out in like a really large field tournament, that would make some sense. But this is one that if that's where we're going to go, you and the owner, you're going to have to talk me into that one.
All right, let's talk about this is worse than the first game that I poo-pooed pretty hard. Cowboys, Washington football team. The Washington football team, if you can believe it, is 1.5 favorites at home, 44.5 point total. Oh boy. Does Andy Dalton get right, Joe Holka, or is the Washington football team being slept on with Kyle Allen at quarterback?
No, I don't think that he gets right. I think that this is a spot where it's a pretty clear Washington defense spot in DFS, 2,500, a team that pressures top 5 in the league. Dallas is just decimated on the offensive line right now. So that part of it seems very clear. If there's another weapon in this game that I'm super interested in, we've talked about him on probably every show this week, but Terry McLaurin at 5,800 still drastically overpriced. Mike Tagliere talked about it in our top 5 DraftKings picks video that he thinks that Terry McLaurin, similar to someone like an Allen Robinson, who we don't really worry a ton about his quarterback play because the volume and the talent is just so great. So I love Terry McLaurin in this game. Outside of that, it's pretty much just the defense for me. But any interest in the Dallas side, Pete?
Yeah, this game is one that is interesting to me in that I feel like the underlying peripherals can point to one of the polls, right? Like you mentioned the defensive line play, the advantage that the Washington football team has. We know Kyle Allen can play awful and slow a game down. On the other hand, you know, Pat Thorman has this as a pace up game. Guys like Terry McLaurin and Michael Gallup can speed up a game so quickly with big plays that I do see this game swinging in one of those directions, just being an absolute dud or being a sneaky shootout, which I know isn't necessarily what everyone wants to hear for what I'm telling you to do with this game. But I do like taking some shots on pieces in here. I have lineups where I like the Zeke and Terry McLaurin correlation here. I think if you need to punt it off at tight end, there's some guys in this game you could do that with Schultz and Thomas. So yeah, this is a game I'm picking my spots on because I do think we're going to see a decent amount of points, but I'm not stacking up this game.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't bet on this game because as much as I agree with everything you guys both said, which seems to be a trend around here, I don't know. I feel like Dallas, they got something to prove. They still have the weapons. Andy Dalton can't be that incompetent. I know the offensive line is decimated, but there might be something. More to squeeze there for Dallas. Whereas with Washington, I kind of know what they are. They're going to be steady. I would probably even play the over on this one just because it seems more, it's a pretty low line and it seems more likely that plays out than it doesn't. But I don't know, probably a stay away game across the board.
One thing I'll mention, and this is a leak in my DFS game that I've been trying to work on, is Washington football team's been a defense I've just been plugging in because they're 2,500. They're going to be very popular. Everyone knows about this defensive line mismatch. So I'm trying to force myself off of it because we don't want to play popular defenses when the scoring is so highly variable. So something to consider if you've just been putting them in as a placeholder.
All right, let's talk about the Bills and the Jets. I wrote this week for Line Movement that you shouldn't play the Jets under any circumstance. Friends don't let friends play the Jets. But right now, it's a 9.5 point line for Buffalo on blitzbet.eu. The total's 46.5. It just seems pretty obvious to me that Buffalo is going to get right, that the Jets can't do anything right, and that this is going to be easy pickings for the Bills. At the same time, the Bills are calling me up to play tight end. So, Joe Holka, where do you stand on this game?
Yeah, just to let Pete know, this is another one of our super contest picks for the week. We are on the Buffalo side, so we are willing to, lay a ton of points, even more than what BlitzBet has it currently is what we're willing to put up. So I agree with you. I think that this Jets team considerably might be like historically bad. LaMarcus said it's the worst team he's ever seen earlier in the week on our Bets Against the Spread show. So I think that there's a chance that we still feel pretty good about that. The super contest is a little bit different because we're still trying to have some picks and actually vault up the field. So maybe people get scared off of this line. Like Lamarca mentioned earlier in the week, the Sharps are still on the Jets, which seems bad from my perspective. A decent game for DFS. I'll let Pete talk about his boy, Josh Allen, in that stack.
Yeah, this is another game that's not going to catch a ton of ownership, but there's some really nice plays. From a news and notes perspective, Jamison Crowder is out. They are activating the rookie Denzel Mims from their IR, so he's going to get a start. Yeah. Well, I will say this. I don't want to get people too hyped up, but from a prospect profile standpoint, he was actually like a slightly better prospect than Chase Claypool from kind of the size, speed, college production. So he's an interesting guy. Obviously, it's going to take him a few games, though, to get worked in.
I would venture to say, I have to interrupt there. Like Chase Claypool plays for the Steelers and Denzel Mims plays for the Jets. Like as much as, yes, they are probably comparable prospects. Where you get drafted is even more important than how good you are when you're drafted. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I mean, the Jets are a dumpster fire, but we see over and over that fantasy production is tied way more to the wide receiver talent than it is the quarterback. It's why we're willing to jam Terry McLaurin, even though Kyle Allen is his quarterback. But yeah, I don't think he's going to have a huge impact this week. If you do want to play a bring back with your Josh Allen to Diggs and even Gabriel Davis stacks with John Brown out, I think Perriman's the guy. He's had a nice role, lots of air yards, getting targeted down the field. I assume Braxton Berrios is going to be the one stepping in for Jamison Crowder in the slot. But if I'm doing a bring back, I'm swinging for the fences with Perriman. But I also think, and Joe, I mean, normally if I do a double stack, I'm always bringing it back. I think you could do the double stack and not bring it back here.
Yeah, the one team that I have with Josh Allen right now, I don't have a bring back on it currently. So I think you have to look at it from this perspective too, especially if you have like your flex open in a lineup like that, is do I want Brashard Perriman or do I want one of these like roughly 4K running backs? I'm always going to skew towards the running back in that situation.
Yeah, and that is a good point, Joe. If you are doing this double stack, you can eat the chalk of those running backs because this is going to be so low owned. And I think just in general, I'll do a little flag plant here. I think Diggs is one of the best plays. Like I thought he should have been in the conversation with Nuke and Michael Thomas and Adams. And now Nuke's banged up. Michael Thomas isn't playing. Like Diggs is that guy. He is underpriced. He's in a smash spot. You can play him as one-offs too. You don't even have to stack him with Josh Allen. I love Diggs this week.
Okay, so we're all taking Buffalo. How do we feel about the total of 46.5? Can the Jets do their part to get over that?
I I hope so for my stack. I guess love that I have with Josh Allen right now. It's tough. It's tough to really say any positive things about the Jets. So maybe that's your answer right there. I don't know. I hope they can. If it's going to be all Josh Allen, I think they have a hard time hitting that total.
Pete, how are you feeling about the total here?
Yeah, I think it's I don't mind the over, and I'm almost even just removing the Jets from the equation of just being like, I think the Bills can put up 35 here. Yeah. And if the Jets could just get themselves one touchdown and a field goal or whatever that math checks out to, like you could get there, but I'm trusting the Bills to get the job done.
Garbage time counts. That's something that we need to remind everybody at all times. Garbage time counts. These touchdowns still go on the board.
Hey, Dieter, before we move on here, been playing around with these alternate point spreads a little bit, having some success with them throughout the year. What would the number have to be for it to be a stay away? I'm looking at DraftKings Sportsbook right now because I can't look at BlitzBet and produce at the same time, unfortunately. But for instance, we have the Bills minus 17.5 for plus 250. We have the Bills minus 16.5 plus 250.
You're going the wrong direction.
Which way would you like to go for the sake of this conversation, guys?
I think I would need it to be I think it needs to be a 3 touchdown game. And that there's some danger in a 3 touchdown spread because of what I just said, right? Garbage time count. And the Jets could just decide to turn it on, and the Bills have been known to turn it off. And I'm not enamored with the Bills defense at all. Not that there's much to be enamored with, but like I don't like what they're doing. Just everything the Jets do is totally incompetent. They're going to run Frank Gore into the back of the line 19 times in a row and then be in passing situation where it's Joe Flacco throwing to Braxton Berrios. Like I'm not buying any of that. So I would need it to be somewhere. It would have to be in the 20s. I would go like 23.5 is where I would get in. I mean, they just got shut out by the Dolphins, who are a good team, but not like exceptional. The Dolphins 24-0 at home. I mean, come on. I need those 24 points if I'm taking the Jets this week. Anybody else have anything to posit on such an alternate line?
The only thing I'll say is Sam Darnold is going to be back. He's a little bit healthier, so I don't know. Maybe that gives a little bit of a boost to the offense relative to what they've been going through with Flacco and a banged up Darnold.
Is that official? That Darnold's like back?
I mean, I don't know what the second of those and third of those backbacks mean, but I think he's back.
It was just a Chris Berman impression, I suppose. He's in. No, okay. Yeah. Okay. That helps. That helps, and that maybe explains why the line is the way it was. It seemed like Darnold was hanging out there. I'm not sure it changes anything. Like Joe Flacco has been the worst quarterback in the NFL this year by QBR. Like Sam Darnold's second to last. Like. There's a reason that they're bad. I like Sam Darnold as a prospect, but at a certain point, you just got to concede that it ain't working, and it ain't working in New York. Guy who is working, Aaron Rodgers, Green Bay Packers at the Houston Texans. Texans giving up 3.5 at home. Total is 56.5, as you would expect when the Houston Texans play football. Start with you, Peter Overzet. How are you feeling about the Green Bay Packers in a bounce back spot here?
Yeah, I do think it's a bounce back spot. The Texans have been giving up points to just about everyone. So I think Rodgers is going to have his way there today. I mean, I love this game for DFS. I think we're going to see 2 pretty chalky options. Jamal Williams with Aaron Jones out. Although I will just say the inactives are going to come out here in a few minutes. Aaron Jones did travel with the team. He has this mild calf sprain. There's still like these rumblings that he might suit up. But we'll touch base on that in a second. Let's work under the assumption that he does sit as initially reported. Jamal Williams at 4,000, just a great play. He has a high floor with his pass catching. They will mix in the rookie AJ Dillon. He's the better short yardage goal line type back. But Jamal Williams has a great floor ceiling here, and I prefer him to Gio as well for that reason. And Devontae Adams is going to be popular as well. He's only 7,900. Now that Michael Thomas and Nuke Hopkins aren't as attractive to hand builders, they are going to gravitate to Devontae Adams. And I just did see from Schefter as I'm talking, Jones officially inactive. So I talked a lot about the Packers here. Holka, what do you like on this Texans side?
I love all of it, man. I think one of the things that still stands out to me since the very beginning of the week in this game is that neither of these teams pressure. Literally, the Packers, like we think of the Packers as a team like that brings a lot of pressure because last year they did a ton. This year they're dead last right now in generating pressure. So something that I looked into like, this is a weird situation for Deshaun Watson because normally he's just under siege with this offensive line. So basically his accuracy jumped from 60% to 85% in terms of his on target under pressure to clean pocket ratio. So that's a crazy stat to me. So I think that there's pretty clear options to pair with Deshaun Watson. He's definitely cheaper than a lot of these guys we'll talk about in terms of Russell Wilson, Kyler. I love this game. I think if there's a game that really just ruins everything for these people that are waiting for that Sunday night hammer, I think this is the one.
It goes both ways, though, right? Like, Houston is not going to be able to pressure Aaron Rodgers. Exactly. The book is out on Aaron Rodgers. If you pressure him, he's going to make quick decisions, sometimes bad decisions. If you don't pressure him, he's going to beat you. Like, he has enough control over this Matt LaFleur offense now that he's going to win. He has enough weapons even without Aaron Jones. So, yeah, I'm in on the over. I'm in on Houston. And if it's a shootout, give me Deshaun Watson in shootouts, man. Like, I understand that they don't have the dudes that Green Bay has, but if neither team's going to play any defense, I like the home team. I like Deshaun Watson. I think he's a better quarterback than Aaron Rodgers. You can argue that it's close. You can argue the other way. This is where I stand on it. This is how I win. So I'm with.
We need to get you a grill, Dieter, and so we can redo the meme from Uncut Gems with you.
Exactly. Yes, these are the important things. Let's get that on the expense report ASAP. I'm in on Houston on this one. I think that Green Bay had been pretty fraudulent. Like, last year, they went 13-3. I think they were the worst 13-3 team in the history of football. They got exposed in the playoffs. I think it's a shootout. I think Houston covers, at least in the shootout. I would even be interested in a money line play there. What are we thinking about? This is a prop that Jordan gave me a little bit earlier. Give me a second here. Aaron Rodgers rush yards. I mean, this is a sexy prop if there ever was one. 10.5 is the total. He's gone over it 3 times. He's gone under twice. How do we feel about Aaron Rodgers getting the scrambling boots out, Peter?
Yeah, I kind of like, not that I've been looking at his historical rush yards and whether that's trending in the right direction, but just under the thesis of let's target this game. Lots of points, lots of broken plays. We know Rodgers can roll out. He's looked a lot better this year as well, kind of rolling out. So I could definitely see it. If we get a ton of plays, that's more chances for a busted play where he takes off. So I like that over as just a gut reaction.
You like that logic, Joe?
Yeah, it's really close if you're just looking at projections, obviously. But I'm with Peter that I think that if there is some spots where he kind of just tries to extend the play a little bit, like, that's always the struggle with paying up for Rodgers and Mahomes in DFS is there's not going to be near the ceiling on the ground as you get from a Kyler or a Josh Allen or even like a Russell Wilson at times. So that's the concern. I think Rodgers is someone you absolutely want to stack with multiple weapons. I think MVS is in play. We didn't talk a ton about him overall, but pairing him with Devontae Adams is something that I've been looking to do this morning and some of my initial builds.
Let's go with an yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I just want to get another flag plant. I don't know what Will Fuller needs to do for people to want to play him more. I mean, he's in all of these shootout games. He's tied to Deshaun Watson. People still have stuck in their head, he's boom bust. He could get me a 0. Who cares? We're trying to win tournaments. And he has a relatively high floor. He is an alpha wide receiver getting targets. I think Will Fuller should be closer to Devontae Adams in ownership, and he's not. I love Will Fuller.
Joe, how do you feel about MVS going over 3.5 receptions today?
I like it. He's one of those guys. We talk about the air yards buy low model quite a bit around here, the Josh Hermsmeyer model, and he's in it this week. Not a ton of names overall, but he's someone that's still leaving a decent amount of air yards on the field. Not a high volume guy by any means, but I do think there's some upside there. So I just want to probably be over on most of my MVS positions today.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. All right, let's talk about the Steelers and the Titans. 2 5-0 teams. This should be the game of the week, at least as it pertains to the actual NFL standings. I'll get your projections on the betting and DFS side in just a second. Total on this game is 51.5. So we're expecting a classic AFC slugfest winter kind of nonsense. The Titans are favored by 1.5 at home in Nashville. This is a fascinating game for a lot of reasons that I'll talk about a little bit later. I got to get your guys' plays on this one. We'll start with you, Joe Holka.
Yeah, I mean, this is a game that I'm going to try and piece this together that I don't play Derrick Henry enough, but these are the type of situations where it does make a lot of sense to play Derrick Henry. Even take it out the fact that, yes, he is being used in the passing game more. That's something I'm trying to get over mentally. I just see him as this guy that doesn't catch any balls, which is just not true.
It's not true.
Also, this is a situation where people are going to see this Pittsburgh defense. They're going to see how elite they've been, but they do have some injuries, in particular in the run stopping area of their defense. So tough matchup for Pittsburgh if they have Derrick Henry coming to town and they've got injuries in that defensive front. So I love Derrick Henry as kind of a lower owned option. I don't think a lot of people are going to go there when Kamara is basically the same price on DraftKings. So I'll preface that with I never get Derrick Henry right. So if I like him, probably should be a full fade.
How you feeling about it, Pete?
Yeah, this is, I agree with you. It's both going to be a great game from a real life perspective. And I think there's some spots here for DFS. Joe mentioned a couple of them there. I mean, Deontay Johnson coming back from his concussion at 4,200 in a normal week where we didn't have as much value opening up, he would have been mega chalk. And now he's going to be down here sub 10% at 4,200. Everyone's excited about Claypool. I still think you project Deontay Johnson for the most targets of any pass catcher in this offense. So I like doing little mini correlations in my DFS lineup. So if I play Deontay Johnson, maybe he pairs with Derrick Henry. You know, Derrick Henry goes off, they're playing catch up. Deontay Johnson has a nice game. And I also like the flip side of it. If you want to play James Conner with the Steelers leading, you play Antonio, AJ Brown, coming back, who's going to come in under 5%. He's in that kind of dead zone tier at 6,300. People wanting to go studs and duds with their wide receivers. I like both of those plays from a leverage standpoint and from a ceiling standpoint.
It feels to me like Pittsburgh, with that multiple defense that they play, is going to just overcommit to Henry, right? And so that means that we're going to have a Ryan Tannehill game, like an authentic Ryan Tannehill game. And that's not something I'm personally willing to bet on. And that's why I'm taking Pittsburgh in the 1.5. But man, is there any DFS value in Ryan Tannehill this week? Is there ever been any DFS value in Ryan Tannehill? Enlighten me, boys.
Not one that I'm on personally. I think this game, you just look at some of the totals for each of these teams. It seems like one that could go relatively under-owned based on even just some of the weapons we have here. That seems bad in some ways. Tannehill isn't one that I'm super on, but I think that there's a lot of opportunities to do little mini stacks here. I guess the narrative surrounding Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool is that they might end up splitting that workload. But if Tennessee can give some fight on the other side with this banged up Pittsburgh defense, maybe it's a really sneaky spot to get a low owned Roethlisberger stack with a lot of these weapons. So I think more of a contrarian spot overall. Not super interested in Tannehill though.
Either mine. Okay, good enough. Let's talk about you. I mean, Pete was already on Antonio Brown. Let's talk about Antonio Brown for a second. He's a member of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, sort of, kind of, should have. We'll see if that actually pans out. He's not playing this week, though. And they're playing a little bit earlier this week because the Las Vegas Raiders not keen on masks or, social distancing or wearing your little tracker guys. So they are going to have 4 offensive linemen in the Raiders. They will not have Trent Brown. They will not have Jonathan Abram, one of their starting safeties. And Tampa is coming in hot, right? They just had this great game against the Green Bay Packers. It's Vegas. It's a new stadium. Nobody's going to be there, so it's not like you have to go against the black hole or anything. They're 4.5-point favorites, the Buccaneers are, on blitzbet.eu. The total in this one is 51.5. I feel like I'm in on Tampa. I feel like they've turned the corner, that they're showing that they're a truly elite team in the NFL. The offense is good enough and the defense is so aggressive that it's hard to even game plan for them. I think Derek Carr is terrible against pressure, even though he hasn't been this year. I think this is a game where he reverts back to Derek Carr. But how do you guys feel about it? Let's start with you, Pete. What are you playing in this game, if anything?
Yeah, I think this is another interesting game for DFS. In a normal week, a game with a 52 over-under would be one people were gravitating to, and this is going to catch no ownership. I don't even think there's going to be a play over 7 or 8%.
What's that about?
In most content, it's just there's so many good plays, and what we see with the slate dynamics is when this value opens up at running back with Gio and Jamal Williams, at wide receiver with Traquan Smith, Gabriel Davis, is people want to go studs and duds, because they like the value plays. And then it's I can literally play whoever I want. However, that's going to lead to very similar construction. So if you are willing to live in this middle range, like we were talking about with the AJ Brown and the James Connors, this game has another great candidate for that. I mean, Chris Godwin looks like an awesome play at 6,400 at his ownership with his ceiling. Darren Waller looks like a great play. And I'm a little nervous about Josh Jacobs with just kind of the revolving door at offensive line and how good this Bucs defense is. But again, from a ceiling ownership combination, Josh Jacobs is another interesting guy that no one is going to play.
Interesting. Joe, talk to me about Tom Brady and the possibility of playing him. Right now we have a prop on BlitzBet. I think it's on Blitz. It could be anywhere. Jordan threw it to me, and we'll talk to Jordan here in a second. The total for Tom Brady passing yards, 271.5. How you feeling about that, and who are you playing, man?
Yeah, Tom Brady's too expensive for me for DFS. What was the yardage prop? I missed
271.5, 271.5.
I'm probably under in this spot. I think I'm a little bit less bullish on this game than Peter overall. I think that Peter likes it a lot because of the ownership and some of the weapons, obviously. So I might be able to be talked into the Godwin stack that he mentioned. But in terms of like Brady overall, I don't think he's in play for DFS. He's just too expensive for me. This is probably the game I've spent the least amount of time on throughout the week, just because originally it wasn't supposed to be on the main slate. So not a ton to love overall. The Josh Jacobs one, I guess, is interesting. It was a little bit more interesting, I think, until we got all of this movement at running back overall in terms of ownership and salaries. Because I still think that if Josh Jacobs is anywhere near the Kareem Hunt range or even Mike Davis range in terms of ownership, I would prefer both of those guys.
Interesting. Pete, do we want to do an active corner like now?
Yeah, we've hit on most of them so far. I mean, the really big inactives, Aaron Jones, Jordan Akins is also out again, Jamison Crowder. There weren't too many surprise inactives. One little nugget one, I saw someone asking in the chat, Jamal Williams versus Gio Bernard. They're both good plays. Tyler Ervin is inactive for the Packers. He's been a guy that's been getting a little bit of pass work for them. To me, that says Jamal Williams is going to be on the field in basically all third down and passing situations. So I'm breaking all those ties in favor of Jamal Williams, in favor of the better game environment, but I still do see the appeal of Gio.
Yeah, just completely transparency. I'm with Pete. I prefer Williams by a pretty significant margin. I have him on every single team right now.
Well, thank God you're being transparent. I mean, Lord knows you hadn't been up until this point. All right, let's talk about
transparency. What does that ownership percentage have to be different that your opinion changes on that, Joe and Pete?
So I think that it comes down to, I don't really want to mash the field. I want to take a stand one way or the other. To me, the price tag at $4K for a guy we already know had a passing game role even before Aaron Jones was out. To me, it just changes the slate completely. I'd rather be completely overweight and wrong than with the field and trying to, match people with my one-offs along the way. So I'd rather be overweight on this situation. I do prefer him to Gio. So if I end up underweight on Gio, overweight on Williams, that's kind of the direction I'm looking at right now.
And the other thing that breaks the tie for me, just how they've been used, is we've seen them use like alternate drives with Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones. Like they'll just use him in all facets, running, receiving. Gio's been more of the satellite back. We know he can carry the ball, but I think his upside is just a little more capped. And they're going to work in Travion Williams, even Samaje Piron's going to get some carries. So Gio's a good play, but I don't think he has the ceiling of Jamal.
No, I'm with you on that. That makes a lot of sense to me. All right, let's talk about the Chiefs and the Broncos. This one is in Denver, and we'll touch base here with. Let's just do it now, Jordan. What's the weather like in the Denver metro area right now? Because this game has all sorts of slop written all over it.
We need Jordan to go outside like with the weather channel, and he's getting blown around.
Literally.
Yeah.
Hold on. I'll be right back.
Put your boots on.
1 second. Grabbing a scarf. It's really, really cold. Like right now I'm in Highlands Ranch. It's about 15 minutes outside of Denver. It's about 17 degrees right now. It's been snowing since about 4 a.m. Probably about 2 inches of snow on the ground currently. It's very windy as well. My trees are going. Very scientific stuff you get here on the Line Movement Pre-Kickoff Show. The trees are moving, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, I don't know, man. It's nasty. It's one thing I could say for sure. It's going to be freezing the whole entire day. It's only going to get colder as well. So keep that in mind. Also, I know we're looking at wind, but it doesn't look like we're talking about like a tornado, hurricane, gale force status. But overall, it's not nice.
Just a steady, strong breeze. And I don't know what to make of this line. Kansas City goes into Denver, and they're 6.5 point favorites with a total of 43.5. The Kansas City Chiefs total 43.5. I either every book is just fading Denver super hard, or they think this weather is going to be extremely prohibitive for scoring points. I don't understand either bits of that logic. It's not like Patrick Mahomes doesn't play in nasty weather like every year. He's in the AFC West. Like this happens a lot. So talk to me, Peter. Like, well, what are you thinking about this game? This seems like a stay away by everything that the book is telling us, but like I'm not buying what they're saying.
Yeah, I'm having a tough time with this game. Like even before the weather issues, Thorman had this as a pace down game. The Chiefs have a pretty good offensive line, defensive line mismatch on the Broncos there. So everything was already shaping up for this to be a bit more of one of those divisional slogs. And then you get the weather on top of it. Then you get some weird kind of pricing stuff with the Broncos on DFS makes them kind of hard to play. I will say Tyreek Hill and Clyde Edwards-Helaire have really nice price tags. At this point, I think if I were to make a play, it would maybe be Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 6,100. He ran the ball so well. If it's cold out and they're still, getting Bell eased into the system, I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire could still have 20 touches, a lot of those on the ground. So I think he's a good tournament play, but I'm kind of off this game. There's just so many other good options that I don't think you need to really force it here.
How you feeling about it, Joe?
Yeah, I'll say this before we even get started, because I know Peter's not going to talk about it, even though he should. He did an interview with Jonathan Bales earlier this week on his channel. I'm going to drop the link into the chat right now. So if anyone's curious about DFS in general, high-level strategy, definitely check out his video with Bales. One of the things they talked about was weather, was wind, that sort of thing. So we talk about those 15-mile-per-hour winds being something that really impacts fantasy scoring. Probably something that doesn't get talked about enough is these really cold games. Really impacts the way that a quarterback can handle the football. So that originally I kind of liked this game in terms of it being like a lower-owned option. But now that we're hearing that it's going to be this cold, I'm moving away slowly. I think that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is at least interesting. Travis Kelce is the one, I think if I had one pick, I'm trying to do better about not just taking the floor, really cheap tight end. That's something else that I learned from that video that I dropped into the chat that I know Bales has been doing for years. So I think I'm going to try and fit in some Travis Kelce into some of these teams, but that's kind of where it ends from a DFS perspective for me.
It feels though like the betting market at least has priced in that weather. I mean, with that total being 43.5, like Kansas City can put up 43.5 in the first half if they put their mind to it. Like we've seen them just go absolutely nuclear. They have Patrick Mahomes as their quarterback. It does feel like there's not enough respect being put on the Chiefs' name here. Am I reading something wrong? Is the weather that bad? Mahomes has played in bad weather and put up big points.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I don't think it's that any one play I think can go off. I just don't think we have the elements for a shootout game.
Right.
And that's ultimately what we get excited about for DFS. But yeah, I can totally picture Tyreek Hill getting loose for long touchdowns, Travis Kelce in and up in the box again 2 times. The one thing I'll say, Joe, about Kelce is it does seem, again, with everyone's salary freeing up, that Kelce's going to be really, really popular. So I might, if I'm kind of trying to make that play, I might look to Kittle, a guy we're going to talk about in a second, if I want a guy with a ceiling and a floor.
Interesting.
Talk to me about
one last thing on Tyreek Hill, though. Just looking at this spot, Denver's actually the best team in the league at defending the deep ball. Not that it maybe matters for a guy like Tyreek Hill, but just wanted to mention that.
Well, it's a cover 4 system. That's how they operate. How we feel about Drew Lock, total passing yards. 217 is the prop. 217 for Drew Lock. Garbage time counts, folks. Garbage time counts.
Oh, this is a guy that I was like, when we didn't have all the salary in the world on this slate, I was trying to figure out if like a Drew Lock to Tim Patrick at really low ownership and cheap salary made sense. So I've kind of backed away, I guess, a little bit from that also, now that we have all of this great running back value. I think if in terms of passing yards, I have them at around 215 or so. What did you say the line was at currently, Dieter?
217.
Yeah. So that's probably a stay away from me. It's probably not a big enough differentiation.
I'll go against my, everything I'm saying is like unders and all this in this game. I will say he's getting Noah Fant back. He just, his first game back was last week on the road in New England. That's always a tough spot. Now you're at home. We expect the Chiefs to be up. They should be in a negative game script. They're also getting KJ Hamler back, who's their speedster deep threat. I'll take the over on Drew Lock. I don't think it'll be pretty, but I think he can get there.
Hey, doesn't matter. The numbers count.
Nothing matters. Nothing matters. We're just all
eat Arby's.
Floating through the cosmos. Yes.
All right. 49ers, Patriots. This one's in New England. Patriots 3.5-point favorites on blitzbet.eu. The total in this game, 45.5. A thing of note here. The 49ers are going to have neither of their starting safeties for this contest. And that seems bad. It seems bad, even against a Patriots offense that can't seem to move the ball all that much. We'll start with you, Pete. Any plays from this game? You talked about George Kittle a second ago. Talk to me about George Kittle. He's going to get double teamed, so this should be interesting.
Yeah. No, and that is it's one of those narratives that exists, but I also feel like one of those narratives that exists for a reason, where Belichick is going to make your ancillary pieces beat you. He is not going to let George Kittle beat him. That said, George Kittle is so good that sometimes those double teams might not even matter. But I do agree, like, if you want to really get in the weeds with this matchup stuff, maybe look at Deebo Samuel here at 5,000. He was used really heavily in the past few weeks. He might be the guy that Belichick says, all right, let him beat us. As far as the running back situation, it sounds like this is going to be kind of a committee again, the team, and I'll let Dieter do boots on the ground. It sounds like they're hyped on JaMychal Hasty. Obviously, McKinnon is going to get a decent amount of work. And then Jeff Wilson, the ultimate touchdown vulture, is going to be in the mix as well. This is, I'm so down on the pass catchers in New England. Like, there's just nothing I can get excited about. Joe and I got burned hard on Cam and these guys last week. So this is mostly a stay away game for me. What do you guys think about any other skill position players that are interesting?
Well, let me talk about the running backs real fast, if you don't mind, Joe.
Yeah,
like,
I'm with you. This is your team, man. We want to hear the San Francisco things that no one's telling us.
They will definitely do a committee, because Kyle Shanahan cannot commit to one running back. I mean, it took him like 18 games to commit to Raheem Mostert as a solo back, and then Raheem Mostert promptly got injured. So, they will definitely do a committee. That means a lot. The best case scenario is a lot of JaMychal Hasty, because JaMychal Hasty is the best back in that backfield. He came in at the end of last week's game against the Rams and looked really good. Like, I've been high on Hasty for a long time. This is a guy who actually fits what Shanahan wants to do, whereas McKinnon is the slowest guy to the line of scrimmage in the NFL per next gen stats, which is the opposite of what Shanahan wants. And I like Jeff Wilson, but they don't really like him that much. I mean, they like him enough to keep him on the roster. Like, in theory, it should be Hasty. What will happen is it'll be a lot of McKinnon, and then they'll go to Wilson, and then eventually they'll be like, damn, we actually need a running back. Let's go to Hasty, and it will look good. And Kyle Shanahan will just be like, well, we got to him eventually. That's how Kyle Shanahan rolls. The question is, can New England take advantage of those wasted possessions at the beginning of the game? And Jordan, I need you to look this up for me real fast, because I'm talking. But, like, can we get a Cam Newton prop on rushing yards in this con? Because it would seem to me as if if the Patriots want to move the ball, big boy Cam's going to have to run the ball for him, because ain't nobody else moving that ball on that team. They can't move the ball through the air. Like, and even against a terrible secondary San Francisco. Let's just say that, a terrible secondary San Francisco, like, with lack of safeties, like, I still don't think they're going to move the ball. Cam can't push it far down the field. The running game is predictable. Like, it's going to have to go back to that week one Cam running the option sort of stuff if they want to move the ball. But
so once we get, boys, let's set the line. What is it? What should his rushing prop be? I was kind of shocked when I saw it, to be honest.
My bet on the prop would be 54.5.
I was going to say 45.
Okay. Well, luckily we're dyslexic. That would be what I would set it at, and I would still take the over, because they have to have the over, I think, to win this game. That's my personal opinion on that one. Joe, do you got any stance on this?
Yeah, I was kind of right there with Pete, so I think that I'd be on the under in this spot. But I get everything you're saying. I think this is it's an interesting game overall. Like Peter mentioned, that we just got so burned by Cam, but I wish he was a little bit cheaper. Maybe you mix him in with one of these quarterbacks that doesn't really give you a huge ceiling on the ground, and then maybe you kind of build some game stacks around that. I guess you can still make the same case for Damiere Byrd that we've been making, but I don't know if I'm going back to that one this week. The Kittle one's hard for me. I guess I'm going to need some more talking into that one versus Kelsey, but I get the play. I guess rarely play Kittle just because I have this weird bias because of blocking, but also the team total is never near as high as it is for someone like Kelsey.
I love the Samuel play. I think the Samuel play makes a lot of sense, because he's going to have to actually receive the ball this week. Like, if the Niners want to win, they're going to have to throw Deebo Samuel the ball. And I think there's some opportunities in the intermediate game. They're going to dare him to throw it deep a lot, but I think that there are some yak yards that can be had. Do we have that? What was the prop?
We do. We're going to hammer it because it's 48.5. I mean, compared to what you guys are saying, I think that we should go heavily invest in that sort of outcome. But 48.5.
Yeah, that's a good stonk.
Maybe they're with you.
Yeah. I'm taking the over.
Yep.
I mean, Belichick at this point, like, no one in this offense trusts these receivers. There's a report that they're now trying to trade for another wide receiver. I mean, Bill has just already said, Cam, just run, just do whatever you want. That's the offense. So yeah, the over looks nice there.
I mean, then we get into some of the more mental side of things where it's like Bill Belichick is telling a guy on a 1-year deal, just go run after, like 10 years in the NFL. And Cam is like, I got to get paid again. How hard do you want me to run here? It'd be nice if they ran at least the option as opposed to like 5 wide QB draw. Let's boogie. This is going to be a big hot mess of a game. And we also have, Shanahan, who's as good as there is at drawing off offensive plays against the greatest defensive mind in the history of the sport. And I like the McDaniels-Robert Saleh matchup, offensive defensive coordinator for the Patriots and the 49ers. I think that this game is going to be tactically awesome and incredibly difficult to watch for anybody who isn't into that. So maybe we just stay away from this game from an entertainment point of view. And if you have anything in this one, Godspeed, because it is going to be a hot mess. Jaguars, Chargers. Chargers are 7.5-point favorites at home at SoFi Stadium. Nobody's going to be there, but they're still favorites. 48.5-point total on this one. Are we feeling Justin Herbert? Are we feeling Gardner Minshew? Let's start with you, Joe Holka.
There were some reports that Minshew could potentially get benched if he continues to play that he has. So I think this is
Mike Glennon.
Oh boy,
this is a game that I wish was. I don't know. I guess it's probably going to end up being a late swap only game for me if I'm completely buried by getting something very wrong in the beginning of the day today. So I think that there's some weapons here on the Chargers side that make some sense. Mike Williams, 4,700. He's still underpriced in my opinion. I'll leave DJ Chark for Peter because I know he really likes him at 5,500 in this mid range of wide receiver. In general, I think Hunter Henry is my favorite play in this game by a pretty significant margin. Jacksonville just cannot defend the tight end, even anywhere in the short intermediate area of the field. So I think Hunter Henry is the play for me. Outside of that, mostly a stay away.
What are you thinking, Joe? Or what do you think of Pete? My bad.
Yeah, so it does seem like Keenan Allen and Hunter Henry are going to catch a little bit of ownership. They would be the 2 over 10% in this game. The chat was talking about this, and one of the more interesting situations is the Chargers running backs. What was weird is Justin Jackson, and both him and Joshua Kelly are affordably priced, but Justin Jackson was limited in practice this week. He was questionable, and then he practiced in full on Friday, but the quote from Anthony Lynn was, "We'll see for if he's good to go this week." So it's been this weird thing where there's uncertainty inside about him, but then they didn't assign him an injury designation on the final report. So the thing that makes that so tricky is Justin Jackson did just slide into the Eckler role when they played. And it's Joshua Kelly's role stayed the same and Justin Jackson became Eckler. If you're telling me I'm getting Austin Eckler or, a 80% version of him at 4,800 in a high scoring game, I'm very, very interested. And on top of that, it's a leverage on the Gio and Jamal Williams ownership. So to me, this is one I'm paying attention to. And a thing that I've been thinking about from a DFS strat perspective is if you save an extra $300 because Joshua Kelly's 5,100, you could make that decision. If Justin Jackson's a surprise inactive, just play Joshua Kelly. On top of that, if you don't love the situation at all, you still have Kenyon Drake in the Sunday night game at 4,800, who's going to be good leverage on all the pass catching ownership. So I think you have some outs there if you want to build lineups around that 5,100 range.
Fascinating.
Let me ask you something here. So obviously these running backs, they're great plays. They're cheap. We're talking about some potential pivots. I'm with you on Justin Jackson. Is Latavius Murray even resembling a play? If the entire world has all this salary, it doesn't just affect some of these cheaper options and the punts and all that stuff. You mentioned stars and scrubs. Kamara's ownership is going to be absolutely through the roof. Is there any value if you're rolling out a team in something like the Million Maker or something larger field with going with Latavius Murray at a similar price point of some of these other cheaper backs, or is that just not enough volume to make the ceiling worth it?
No, I think you nailed it. I mean, he is the epitome of direct leverage on the Alvin Kamara ownership. And we saw this play out a few weeks ago where Kamara was heavily owned and Latavius stole 2 touchdowns. Yep. And that's that kind of leverage where the field, who's going to be 50% owned in the Millie Maker, you skyrocket past him with your 1 or 2% owned play. I don't have the stomach for it in 3 max single entry, higher buy-in stuff. But if you have the cojones as a contrarian player in the Millie Maker, it's one of the best pure leverage spots you'll get.
He's got some games here with 15 carries. He's got some games here with at least a couple targets. Like you said, it's not near as safe as Jamal Williams or as Gio, nothing like that. But I actually think it's kind of interesting. It was only a couple of years ago we were talking about because when college football DFS, you can just play both the running backs in a situation. This is one everyone. Kamara and Latavius together, that would be the situation. I don't think it makes sense for something like the Millionaire Maker. But if you are going to play something like 3 max where you don't need that perfect score, maybe it's the Kamara and Latavius show, and it doesn't matter who scores the touchdowns because you have both. Yeah. And then if you happen to get like that combination of Kamara, Latavius ends up being better than Kamara and one of the really cheap running backs, I do think that could be at least a path to being different on this slate where there's going to be a lot of chalk.
It's interesting stuff. It's interesting stuff for sure. Let's talk about that Sunday night game real fast. Seattle and Arizona gets moved into that spot. We get primetime Russell Wilson. We get primetime Kyler Murray. Seattle is a 3.5-point favorite at Arizona. Blitzbet.eu, 54.5-point total. I'm not sure they're at Arizona. I don't know. We'll figure that out later. Doesn't matter. Seattle's a 3.5-point favorite. How are we feeling about this game? Arizona looks like it's figured out how to put up points, that Kyler Murray's not just going to throw the ball to the other team without any real regard for why. I think they figured that part out. Seattle just on a heater. Like there's just no two ways about it. And they don't have Antonio Brown, so the entire thing isn't going to collapse on them. So how are we feeling about this? We'll start with you, Pete.
Yeah, I figured I should put on my hard hat for the Sunday night hammer here, this game. Yeah, no, this is, everyone's stoked about this game. Everyone wanted it. On the main slate, I can't do this. I'm just not in the mood for it right now.
Yeah, it's fine.
And there's going to be ownership and the prices are expensive, but I still think you want pieces of this game. And yes, there are better leverage spots for tournament ownership, but it's hard not to imagine points being scored in this game. So even if you're not playing the passing game, maybe think about one of the running backs. Carson and Drake are going to be under-owned relative to what I think their upside is. And I think this is also the kind of game you can get gross with the ancillary pieces, like the David Moores, the Isabellas, the Greg Olsons. No one gets excited about those guys, but there's going to be points and you're going to need to get unique somehow. You can't just roll out the chalk.
All right, Joe. Arizona is in Arizona, so that has to help something. How are you feeling about your Cardinals, buddy?
Yeah, I mean, this is a game like play everyone. This is a spot where I think if you're going to try and just roll out like your normal Russ, Metcalf, Lockett stack, bring it back with Hopkins, not only is it very expensive, it's going to be very popular. So I think there's 2 ways to approach this game. Either go relatively underweight, maybe you have some mini stacks and have a piece of it like Peter said, or you overstack it completely and you just assume that this game is going to have significantly more points than any other game on the slate. I don't want to be anywhere in between. Personally, I think with how bullish I am on this Green Bay and Houston game, I wish that game was at 4 p.m. But there's a reality that we could be living in where this game is the hammer that everyone's waiting for, and it just ends up being Chris Carson's show. And those are the people that win all the money, are the ones that went in on some of these other great situations throughout the day. Obviously, late swap is extremely important. So like the ability, if you do have some of these stacks and things don't go well in the beginning, maybe you miss on a Green Bay Houston, you can still get different with the 4 p.m. games pretty easily with the Chargers stack or moving into something like a Tampa Bay stack, like Peter mentioned before. So I think that he hit it dead on. Don't roll out something that everyone else is going to in this spot because, I mean, everyone's dealing with the same salary cap. So they're going to end up on similar plays around it also. I'm doing better at trying to not just like go all in on these spots that look great on paper because you have to have everything else go right to truly pass people.
There's some game theory involved. That's the whole goddamn thing. All right, real quick. I just want a betting play on the Monday night game. Bears are getting 6.5 at the Rams. Peter, are you feeling the Rams here?
I'm so glad that this is just a isolated Monday game. I'm not too excited about this one. My just gut instinct is to take the points because I feel like the Rams have been a little fraudulent. Jared Goff is always due for an implosion here or there. So I don't know.
What did we see last week then?
Well, I mean, he's your Jimmy Garoppolo, right? He's erratic. You never know what you're going to get. So I'm going to take the points, but I'm a betting fish. So who knows?
All right. What do you got here, Joe?
I'm with Pete. I think this game's gross overall. Really happy it's not on the main slate. I will not be partaking most likely in the showdown slate, even though I know Pete likes these gross showdown games. I think overall I'd be with them. I just take the points in this one. I'm not a big Jared Goff person overall, so anytime I can be on the other side of that, I usually take it.
Fair enough. All right. I want both of your guys' best play and your best bet of the main slate. So we'll start with you, Joe. What is your best play on the main slate and what's your best bet?
Yeah, best play, pretty clearly Jamal Williams at 4K on DraftKings. Really hard for me to get away from him. I guess trying to be either not even with the field. If he ends up like 30 to 40%, I'd rather be significantly above that today. So I think that would be that flag plant. I think that just in general, I understand that all the sharps are on the Jets. I'm still on the other side of it. I think that this Buffalo team, I don't know if like Lamar could chirp me earlier in the week for calling it a statement game, but I think Buffalo gets right here. And they do cover against this Jets team, who I think is, like, from what LaMarcus said, the worst team he's ever seen. So I actually still think that the Buffalo side of that is where I want to be.
I think you're spot on there. Peter, talk to me. You just lost Jamal. So who do you have instead?
You know what? I'll stay within the realm of that Bills game. I'll say Stephon Diggs goes nuclear. I'll say he's in the winning Millie Maker lineup, a guy that you need to have to take down tournaments. I'm not going to have him in every single one of my lineups, but I'm trying to get him in as many as possible. My favorite bet, we talked about a few. I'll go all the way back to that first game we talked about. I'll take the under in that Cincinnati-Cleveland game. 50.5 seems pretty high for the caliber of these teams. I don't think they can replicate what they did back in week 2.
I leave the plays to you guys, but I'm really liking Kansas City giving up 6.5, and I'm really liking the over in that game. I'm not going to buy in on the weather. I get it. It makes a lot of sense. And then Patrick Mahomes just throws 4 passes over the top and it's game over. So I'm just buying Mahomes. Anytime I can get a Mahomes game with a total of 43.5, I don't care if it's being played in a snow hurricane. I'm taking it. So that's where I stand on this one. Hope everybody out there uses blitzbet.eu to bet this weekend. We had a great slate of games. I got talked into it from front to back. It took me a while, but I got talked into a great slate of games today. Blitzbet.eu for all of your betting needs if you are in the Great White North or anywhere that's really not the U.S. And listen, there are ways if you wanted to use blitzbet.eu in the U.S. We won't tell you, but there are ways. Okay, Peter Overzet, Joe Holka, I'm Dieter Kurtenbach.
Peter, tell people about Tilt Space before we get out of here.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, right. So, yes. Tilt Space. My bad.
Tilt Space normally at 6:30 p.m. Eastern as we end those 4 p.m. games. Because we have the extended main slate, we want to be live sweating the slate ending. So we are going to go live around halftime of the Cardinals Seahawks game. And I assume we are going to carry it all the way to the end. Hopefully we have some sweats in play. We're going to go work on those lineups now. I believe if you guys need a ballpark time, I'm guessing that'll be around 9:30 to 9:45 p.m. Eastern time when we'll go live.
Tilt Space, 9:30-ish. Halftime. You don't want to watch that halftime show. Just turn on Tilt Space. All right. Do that. We'll talk to you guys later.